thank you, and thanks for having me. So I'll start out by just asking a question. How many of you grew up in the US eating school lunch, or have kids who eat school lunch? Pretty big show of hands. How many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you enjoyed those meals? Very few. How many of you feel like the meals that you ate in school or the meals that your kids are eating in school meals today were, really set you up for success in terms of health and nutrition? I didn't mean that as a joke. So I don't see any hands. Not surprisingly, that was kind of what we were looking at 15 years ago when my co-founder Kirsten and I came together to start Revolution Foods. We were looking not only at the quality of food that's being served in schools, but also at some of the statistics that we were seeing in terms of health in our country. 1 in 3 kids in the US today is overweight or obese. 1 in 2 kids in communities of color is at risk of contracting type 2 diabetes in their lifetime. And this generation of kids that are growing up today are the first generation in US history to be predicted to live a shorter lifespan than their parents. So those are pretty sobering statistics when you start looking at all of the improvements that we've made in things like medicine and overall kind of healthcare in our country. So when we started out 15 years ago, we were looking at the fact that 55 million kids are in school today, or at least today 55 million kids are in school. About half of those kids rely on the federal school meal, subsidized meal program for their reliable meals of the day, including breakfast, lunch, after school meals. And those kids are really reliant on those meals for their food. Many of those kids come from food insecure communities, and we are really faced with a crisis in our country around health, but it's driven by, in part, the food that we're feeding kids in our schools. The National School Lunch Program was established just after World War II as a way to, better nourish our, young people in America so they'd be fit enough to fight and defend our country. We're faced with a very different challenge now where the U.S. national security is still threatened by the fact that we don't have our young people fit enough to fight, but it's for very different reasons than it was in the 1940s. It's less about hunger, much more about sort of poor nutrition in a very different way. So when we looked at this, we realized this is not just about creating a product and getting it into a market. It's not just about selling food to a customer and making sure that they like that food. Feeding kids healthy food in schools takes a real systematic approach. We had to really look at the entire ecosystem that surrounds the kids in schools today, and what's driving the fact that we're that the food in this system has been sort of neglected for the better part of the last century since the National School Lunch Program was established. We kind of took a look at this not just as a product problem, although the product is important. We decided we were going to design our product in combination and in coordination with the students that we serve every day. We have a team of chefs who are designing and talking to kids every day in schools. For those of you in food companies, these things might not be big surprises, but in school food, this was not happening 15 years ago. And then we also decided that we want to make, we set out looking at these trends in health. We wanted to make sure that our meals set kids up for success, both in terms of health, healthy eating habits, and long-term academic and school success. So we designed our food quality and ingredient standards, our nutrition standards, to make sure that we were going to meet those goals. Having a great product is one thing, but you also have to make sure that when you're starting a new company, that you're launching into a large market. We looked at the marketplace and said, this is a pretty big market. There's, over $30 billion being spent on families feeding their kids, whether it's, subsidized meal programs in schools, whether it's after-school programs, whether it's food service that school districts or food service products that school districts are buying. So when we set out to talk to investors about this idea, they're always investors are looking for a large market. We had a large market, but you can't just have a great product and a big market. What we realized is that this is a systemic problem. This ecosystem was not setting up kids for success and was not setting up the school meal program to be able to build lifelong healthy eating habits in our most vulnerable populations. So when we took a really kind of ecosystem-based approach to building our business, we are a for-profit business. You know, we are capitalists here and conscious capitalists, just like many of you. Who we were bringing on as investors was incredibly important to us. Our investors needed to be people and entities that supported and believed in the mission and in the value, not just the financial value, but the social value of feeding kids healthy food in schools and setting kids up for success. Obviously, the families, the students, the parents that we work with every day are a critical part of the success of what we do. We've had, you know, school systems where the parents have kind of gone to their school leaders and said, we are tired of our kids being served, you know, this quality of food. We want to have a voice in improving that. There's a significant kind of policy and administrative system that we're working within. We have, you know, city and government officials, public policy officials, school boards, you name it. There is one of our superintendents most recently said the number one thing affecting what schools are choosing to feed their kids in schools today is politics. It's not price, it's not access, it's not quality, it's politics. It's a very political environment that we operate in, for better or for worse. And so having the policy environment and policymakers who are looking for change be a part of that conversation has been critical to our success. I don't want to underplay the importance of the nonprofit sector, and I know Lynn earlier was saying it's the social profit sector, which I like that word. We've had significant partnerships with nonprofits who've been able to help set up the environment in schools for the success of our program. Many schools don't have the equipment that they need to be able to serve and produce healthy meals for their students. Nonprofits have the ability, and foundations. We've had a lot of great philanthropists who've come in and provided the capital needed to, you know, invest in that capital expenditure at school sites so that schools have the equipment to be able to, whether it's put a salad bar in place, serve fresher, healthier food because they now have more refrigeration capacity instead of just freezer capacity. The nonprofit and philanthropic sector has been a significant part of us being able to build success in our communities. Our supply chain and the partners that we have built in our supply chain have been incredibly critical to our success, whether it's, you know, suppliers that we've gone to and said, hey, you make a great product in this one region, can we help you get that product into a nationwide supply chain serving healthy food to low-income kids? We've hardly ever had a supplier say no to that growth opportunity. And then I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but our employees, obviously that's not an external part of our impact strategy, but it certainly is critical to how we operate and how we do business. I always like to bring the voice of our stakeholders into the room, so I'm going to just cue up a video here so you can see one of our stakeholders.
Hi, my name is Giovanni Ramos, and I'm the principal here at Foundation Prep. And this year, we've just been thrilled to have Revolution Foods join our Foundation Prep family. And I can say join our Foundation Prep family because at our school, we believe that students need a place where they feel like they belong and where they feel safe. The Revolution Foods workers have made our students feel like that. From the morning when they walk in to get their breakfast, they're greeted with a smile, they're greeted with their name, and then they're given a really, really healthy breakfast that they may not know is healthy, but they are really enjoying it. That same amount of perspective, love, and joy that they start at breakfast continues at lunch with those same healthier options. Students are really, really enjoying food, and we're thrilled to have Revolution a part of our family.
So it might have been a little bit hard to hear, but my favorite thing that he says in there, well, two things. One is that he says that Revolution Foods has become a part of our family in the school. He's a principal at a school in New Orleans that we work very closely with. And I think, a lot of times companies see stakeholder engagement as sort of a necessary evil or as a risk mitigation strategy that your stakeholders are going to kind of come out and get you if you don't engage them. For us, stakeholders are absolutely critical to the success of our platform. So as a principal in a school, having him feel like we are a part of his family in the school and that families respect us as a part of the family. The second my second most favorite thing that he says in there is that we treat the students with respect. And that's, students are probably the number one stakeholder in our environment. And coming from a world where the school meal system did not treat students with respect, it comes as a surprise to many school leaders that we come in and we actually ask the kids what they want to eat for lunch and what they like and what they don't like, and we collect data on what their preferences are, and we use that data to drive our product innovation process. So in that sense, stakeholder engagement is absolutely critical to the success of our company and of our growth. Speaking of growth, we've, over the last 13 years of operation, grown to serve 2,500 school sites across 15 states. The impact that we've had has enabled us to grow and expand to be able to deliver now close to 2.5 million meals every week. And that number is growing with each school year that we operate. I think that probably one of the most inspiring parts for me about the impact that we've had is that we've actually had an impact on student academic success. And that has been now shown in a couple of studies that have come out showing that kids who are eating our menu actually have performed better on their tests over the 5 years of our working with them. And we're just so incredibly proud. This is exactly what we set out to do. At the same time, 2 million meals a week is not serving the 55 million kids that are in the schools today in our country. So we feel like we're just at the tip of the iceberg, and we are learning and growing and continuing to build as we go. I think one of our most kind of important but least recognized parts of stakeholder engagement and sort of ecosystem building is how the procurement system in our country works around government procurement for everything from any kind of product that the government is procuring. It's billions and billions of dollars that are going, being funneled through in different ways. But the procurement process in schools, when we first looked at this 15 years ago, was not at all oriented towards what's going to set students up for success, what's going to create the highest quality meal program in our schools, what's going to make kids happy and actually wanting to participate in the school meal environment. It was all about how do we get food into our cafeteria that is at a very bare minimum edible. So really looking at the whole system of procurement, not just about the product and the customer, but how do we set up the whole system so that schools can actually now go and say, we want to provide the best quality food that we possibly can for our students, and we want that food to be free of artificial colors and flavors, and clean in the labels, and have fresh fruit available every day for students. The system that we operate within is not designed to have those things be the priority. So I think the last element of our impact that I'll mention is what I kind of call our collateral impact. We look at how do we do what we do every day. We've created over 1,500 jobs in the culinary centers that we operate to serve and create and build and deliver the meals that we provide every day. And I think I'll just end briefly with one last video clip of one of our team members.
Fran was interested in working for Revolution Foods. I would tell them it would be a great place to start a career. Even if you start from the bottom, it's always potential to work your way up. You learn a lot. You meet a lot of nice people. And it's a lot of opportunities. I do a lot of things outside the job, like catering events. You get exposed to a lot of different things. So it's a good company to work for because you will grow and you will be supported.
So I'll just wrap up by saying for us, conscious capitalism is about being conscious of the ecosystem in which you operate. And I think all of us as business leaders can think about how do we not just make our own company successful and profitable and able to grow, but how do we make sure that the whole ecosystem that we are operating in is thriving and healthy and setting our stakeholders up for success?